Hey guys, it's Dalton, and I'm going to be showing you how to shuffle arrays. This concept will work in pretty much all languages, but I'm going to be showing you guys in C# today. So the first thing we want to do in main is actually create the array of integers. So I'll do that now. And I'm just going to set this array equal to the integers 1 through 10, because that way it'll be easier to tell that they've actually been shuffled at the end. So now we're going to create the shuffle array method. And we need to take the actual array that we're going to be shuffling as a parameter. And we'll just add the call for shuffle array right here. Now the first thing we want to do in shuffle array is create an integer that will hold the length of the array we passed. So we're going to do a.length. And that's going to be useful for several things in the shuffle array, but you'll see what we need it for in a bit. The first thing we need it for is actually a for loop to iterate through the entire array. So we'll create an index, set it to 0 because we want to start, it's 0 index in C#, so we want to start the first index. And then it's going to be less than the length of the array, which we set to n, and then increment by 1 every time. Before we can actually shuffle this array, we're going to need another method called swap. So we're going to create that now. Whoops. And this is going to be void. And we want to pass the array that we're going to be swapping the index of the first and the index of the second integer that we're going to be swapping. And I accidentally called them both a, so make sure you don't do that. So first we're going to create an integer value, and we're going to call it temp, and we're going to set this to index a, the first index of this array. And this way when we swap, we won't lose the value of a. So now we're going to set b equal, or my bad, a equal to b. And then b is going to be equal to temp. So basically temp is going to hold the integer that was in the array at index a, which we're going to pass in shuffle array. And then a gets changed from its value to what b was. But that's why we created temp, because then b, the index of the array b, will be changed to temp. So we won't lose the value that was in a. So now that we're done with that, we're actually going to need a random object in shuffle array. So now that we have random here, we're going to actually need to swap. And of course we're passing it a, the array of integers. And then I, which is the index that we're currently at in the for loop. So now the third parameter we're going to pass is actually going to be a random index that's further than I in the array. So we're going to add a random, So we're going to create a random integer and add it to I. In here, we're actually going to want the length of the array minus the current index to make sure we don't go out of bounds. So this third parameter is I, which is the current index at the for loop, plus the length of the array minus the current index, a random integer from 0 to that. So it's going to swap it with a random index that's further in the array than I. So now I'm actually going to create a for loop that will just help me output. And this console.readline will just keep the console from closing at the end. So now when we run this, you can see that this is not in anywhere near the same order it was at first. So that's basically how you're going to shuffle in a one-dimensional array in C#. And the concepts are the same in almost any language, but there's obviously going to be different syntax for different languages. So now I'm actually going to show you guys how to do it with a two-dimensional array. Okay, so now we're going to need to modify swap to be able to swap from a two-dimensional array. So I'm just going to call these change R. Oh, I forgot. Change R for change row. And change C for change column. And then int A and int B. So we're going to need 4 integers because we need to swap a row and a column. So now temp is going to equal the array at A and B. And then array at A and B need to be equal to the array at change R and change C. And then this array, I'm just going to copy paste it. Needs to be set to temp. So now this swap function is actually done. So now we need to get into shuffle array. Now this is going to be a little bit different because we need to use nested for loops to increment the rows and the columns separately. So we're going to make an integer called n, which is going to be equal to A. And we need to do get length and then 0. And this gives us the length of the first dimension of the array. A dot get length of 1. That'll give us the length of the second dimension of the array. So now we're going to nest these. We need the index variable again. I is less than n. And then I increments by 1 every time. And then inside this for loop, we need another for loop, and I'm going to use int j instead of I. And j needs to be less than m, and j increments every time through the loop. Now, we're going to need this similar format for outputting, so I'm just going to use that now. But m and n aren't going to exist out here. So r dot get length 0 and r dot get length, oops, 1. Okay, so we have the output all set up, but what we're going to need to do is actually use the swap method now. So of course we're going to swap with A. So here we're going to be using a very similar concept to a one-dimensional array, but we're going to need to generate a new row and a new column every time. So we need to use rand twice and create a new random index for the row and the column. So we're going to need to do I plus rand n minus I. Okay, and then we're going to need to do j, because this is for the second dimension of the array, rand m minus j, because m is the length of the second dimension, so we need to use that instead. Oh, I forgot dot next, my bad. I was trying to figure out why that was messing with me. And then finally we need to send it I and j, because those are what we're swapping from. So now this should work. It would have output 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But because we shuffled it, it output 10, 4, 9, 3, 5, 2, 7, 8, 6, 1. So these are the basic ideas, the basic concepts of shuffling 1 and 2-dimensional arrays. And if you have even more dimensions, like the 3-dimensional array, you just simply need to use this concept that I've been showing you, but just keep adding more nested for loops and swapping, obviously, like change width, or I don't even know, change width. But yeah, that's the basic concepts for shuffling an array. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial.